Welcome to Road to Recovery.
Hello and welcome to Road to Recovery, advocacy and insights for trucking accidents with Sagi Shaked. Sagi is founder of Shaked Law Personal Injury Lawyers and is ranked as one of the top 100 trial lawyers in the United States by the American Trial Lawyers Association. He has a wealth of experience in personal injury, wrongful death, and complex litigation cases, and he passionately advocates for his victims. Today, we're going to talk about kind of a terrifying type of crash, jackknife trucking accidents. What causes them, who's responsible, and how can victims recover? My name is Kevin Rosenquist, and of course, as always, I am joined by Sagi Shaked. Sagi, welcome.
Thanks, Kevin.
So yeah, these sound like absolutely terrifying. I mean, I've seen it in movies where the truck is, in action movies where the truck's jackknifed and coming towards our hero and all that. And even that's like, oh my God, I can't even imagine. So for listeners who may not know or haven't seen the same action movies I have, what exactly is a jackknife truck accident and why is it particularly dangerous?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when you think about a jackknife accident, think about a tractor and a trailer. So the tractor has the trailer portion hooked up on the back. And when the trailer of the semi-truck swings out at an angle of a cab, so imagine like they're driving straight and suddenly there's like an L shape and they're just driving forward in an L shape or a V shape, sort of like maybe like a folding pocket knife, right, with a V, and they're just riding along. It does cause the truck to skid out of control. They block multiple lanes. It can cause a rollover on the part of the 18-wheeler. We have a couple of those, and that can cause horrific damage all over the roadway, especially if someone's driving, not too far from the truck and they jackknife. The ability to stop on a dime is almost impossible for any car, especially when you're on a highway. So a truck driver can lose their steering. You see it a lot, people play on social media or in the movies, like you said, very scary. If there's passengers in the cab of the truck, they can get stuck in there. And usually you see this on, highways, on high speeds, or where there's a construction site where they're coming up to a sudden stop and suddenly they skid out of control and that V shape or that L shape starts happening.
Yeah. So is that like what really makes that happen though? Is it a sudden stop and the trailer just, can you explain it a little bit better? Like how it works?
Sometimes you see this on wet roads or icy roads. That happens a lot. When they're speeding and driving off curbs or off ramps, that can happen. When they're not using the gear properly, it could be that they're improperly downshifting and suddenly you go into a jackknife situation. Or you see this a lot. Remember, we talked about in the past about cargo claims where the cargo on the trailer is not properly loaded.
Mhm.
And so that causes the 18-wheeler to swing, potentially causing a jackknife or a rollover. You see that a lot sometimes when drivers are fatigued, right? You lose control and you start dozing off. We've had a lot of those cases where truck drivers just are fatigued. And then sometimes there's mechanical failure where the brakes don't work. And that happens too. So those are the most common causes of jackknife type of accidents. A lot of them, again, on wet roads or icy roads where the drivers are just going too fast for the conditions.
Yeah, that's always a tricky one, right? I mean, if somebody, going too fast for the conditions, that could be somewhat subjective. Is that a difficult thing to prove?
Yeah, well, not too difficult because remember, we have the electronic data recorder, which is the black box. So you have that, and then you have the combination. It's the speed, the weight of the truck, the road surface conditions, if they're wet or not. They don't have to be wet. Was the driver fatigued? Was the driver not fatigued? Or did they downshift properly? Many different things, but the speed for sure we can get the last 5 seconds. So long as the truck hasn't burned, usually we can get that. So that helps in helping us, make the claim that there was something going on that was wrong there. Because trucks are not supposed to jackknife. So
Right.
if they're doing that, there's a problem.
Yeah, you mentioned the way the truck is loaded can have an impact on this. We've talked about this before, but just for anyone who hasn't listened to those previous episodes, which you should, by the way, but how does improper cargo loading or particularly the weight distribution lead to that jackknife accident?
Right. So when you have a trailer that is improperly loaded, the trailer can sway. It can rock, especially if you have a road surface that's a little bit uneven. If the trailer is not stable, it's going to roll over. You can have braking instability when the weight distribution is not put in right. So again, if they're loading that truck and they're not loading it properly, there are experts for that. That weight distribution can cause a lot of problems for the truck driver. It's unfair to the truck driver when if it's not the truck driver's fault and it's mainly the loading people. So that reduces the traction on the wheels. So that can cause accidents, especially if they have to stop right away. The load is extremely important that it's done right. There's so much that goes into driving a truck, from the pre-trip inspection to the loading to the driving to ensuring they're not fatigued. This all comes into play. So we always want to look at where are the violations, what went wrong, who's at fault. And then again, if it's the person who loaded it, the company, you may have more of a pocket to go after, especially if you're dealing with what they call the mom and pop trucking companies, the one truck that they own and that's the only truck and they caused the crash. We may have to look at who else is involved there.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, because I feel like most people, when they think about a situation like that, the loading of the truck wouldn't pop into their head as the reason for that. But it really makes sense when you think about it, because we've all seen, like, pendulums or anything like that, or any sort of device that has all the weight on one side. Yeah, that's going to swing out really hard. So it does make sense. You mentioned the pre-trip checks. Is that part of the pre-trip check? So is there a situation where you can say, okay, well, it was improperly loaded, but it was also should have been caught by the truck driver during his check, or whoever does that?
Yeah, so it's definitely not going to be. A lot of times the truck drivers don't even know what kind of cargo they're hauling. They're just getting the trailer and taking it from point A to point B. So it wouldn't be so much on the truck driver. Look, if there's something wrong with the not with the load, but with the trailer portion, then you can go after the company that um, gave them the trailer. So we have a case right now where it's not a jackknife accident, where the 18 wheeler is parked, but part of it is parked sticking out onto the roadway. Sort of it's parked into the driveway, but a good portion of it is on the roadway. And this happened at nighttime, and it didn't have the reflective tape on it,
Mm.
where it's supposed to all over the trailer portion. And so in that case, we can go after the trailer company. Same thing if you have a cargo that is not properly balanced and they didn't put it together right, and that causes the truck to roll over. Yes, the trucking company is responsible, but you also have the people who loaded the truck there. Different and apart. It wouldn't be found on a pretrial inspection. He wouldn't know, or she wouldn't know, the truck driver, that it's not loaded properly unless they're driving and they realize, hey, there's something wrong here. We need to
Mhm.
stop this truck and figure out what's going on. Why is our load causing us to sway all the time?
When it comes to investigating, for you and for any investigators that you hire, are there specific things that you look for, or specific areas that you can address, as far as like finding liability in jackknife cases in particular? Because we've talked about several different reasons that this could happen. Sure, there's some black box data and all that, but is it difficult to figure that out, how it actually happened?
It's not so difficult. So what we want to do is obviously get to the scene right away, or if you don't get to the scene right away, sometimes we get involved weeks later when they get out of the hospital. Um, you want to look for those yaw marks on the road, those skid marks on the road, so we can start putting together at what point do we start seeing the jackknifing happening, right? And
Okay.
that's when your accident reconstruction expert can come in and reconstruct the accident. So if there's any video of the incident from a street cam or from a dash cam or eyewitnesses, that would really help. The weather, you want to know what the weather was like at the time, the maintenance logs, the inspection records, and the cargo records as well. So, but it really will boil down to, on a jackknifing accident, the witnesses and the accident reconstruction expert, because we really want to make sure that we can pin it, if it is the trucking company's responsibility, really pin it on them for what they did or what they failed to do.
When it comes to regulations, are there federal trucking regulations that relate specifically to preventing these types of jackknifing accidents?
Yeah, absolutely. So we go back to the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. They came out with some regulations. So there's brake system standard regulations. That's chapter 393.4, 40 actually, 393.40. Then there's the cargo securement rules. That's in chapter 393 as well. I think it's from section 100 to 136, where you'll find out the different rules and regulations applying to how to load, what requirements they have to do. There's that. Then remember, when we talk about fatigue, because you can jackknife because you're fatigued and falling asleep on the roadway, there's rules and regulations dealing with hours of service and how many hours you're allowed to drive. And then what I would look at also for newer trucks, we talked about anti-braking systems, that anti-lock braking systems that can really be beneficial to prevent this stuff from happening, especially the AEB, the automatic emergency braking system, where they can anticipate in advance if there's something up front that's going to be blocking the truck driver, especially if you have a fatigued driver. Now you have your computer system who's going to assist the driver in slowing down. So those are some of the ways, the regulations are out there. You have the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations, which are key, and usually every state mimics the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you picture it, and that, like, just the terrifying view from the passenger cars around it, and of course the driver's got to be freaking out too in those situations. What are the most common types of accidents you see when it comes to jackknifing? I mean, do you see it where they just sort of kind of take out cars as they're going? Because it's a pretty big, that's a pretty big area of truck coming at you.
Yeah, so usually when the ones we're involved with right now is where the truck driver jackknife. This is one we're involved in right now. Truck driver jackknife, and our client was right next to them, smashed into our client, and then as people were behind the truck, they couldn't stop in time, and they smashed into our client, and then another person smashed into our client. So you're talking about the client took 3 different hits, first from the 18-wheeler, then from another person, then from another person. I have another case where the client was behind the 18-wheeler when it jackknifed, and they didn't have enough time to avoid it. So yeah, they ended up smashing into the 18-wheeler. The people behind them didn't have time to stop because it's hard to stop a vehicle going 65 miles an hour. You don't expect these trucks to jackknife. I mean, I'm always staying away from 18-wheelers just because they scare me. I see so many things.
Yeah, you've seen enough, right?
Yeah. They lose wheels, and the wheels are flying off the roadway. I mean, it's crazy. Stay away from 18-wheelers if you can. Again, not all 18-wheeler drivers or truck drivers are bad, but there are some bad ones, and they can cause some really bad wrecks.
When it comes to the settlements, the trial, the case itself, are there more complexities in these situations of jackknifing trucks, or does it all kind of fall into the same trucking niche of personal injury?
Yeah, it kind of falls into the same realm of when you're handling a truck case. You really want to get that accident reconstructionist involved because you really want to explain what happened and how it could have been avoided, because all these cases can be avoided with some level of care and safety involved, whether it's training or whether it's taking that extra second. Remember, there's no reason to speed anywhere. If you're late, you're late. You'd rather be safe than sorry. We've all heard that, right? That's something we all know. So to prevent someone from dying or suffering a horrific brain injury or injuries for that matter, always take that extra precaution. So the accident recons do make a difference in these cases and help tell the liability story of what happened. And then obviously you want to get your trucking expert involved to talk about any violations with the hours of service. If you have a fatigue case, you'd want to get a doctor involved on that too. So it just depends on the case. But the complexity is there. They're a little bit more complex than the standard rear end collision.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, all trucking cases, we've talked about it. I mean, I've learned a lot about trucking cases talking to you, and they are very, very complex. But especially a jackknifing situation can involve so many more cars, so many more people, so much more property damage and all that, just because of the sheer angle of the vehicle. I mean, do these tend to go on longer? Are they more complicated? Is there more because more people are generally involved?
Yeah, so it really depends. I hate giving that answer. Well, that's like the teacher in law school. It depends, right? The answer depends. Depends on, how many people are involved in the wreck. Is the trucking company taking responsibility, or are they fighting tooth and nail? We have a
Yeah.
case going to trial in a couple of weeks where we've been at it for 3+ years, and they're just fighting us. This is what they do. So it depends on, who's the trucking company, who's the lawyers. Some lawyers are, they're not looking to settle the case. They're looking at this and seeing the defense lawyers. They see this as a billing machine. They get to bill their client an hourly rate, and as long as that file's open, they get to continue to bill. But when that file's closed, that billing stops. So they have an interest in keeping that file open, where us as the lawyers representing the plaintiff, the person who's injured, or the family, we'd like to get the case resolved for the family so they can put that chapter to bed. Unfortunately, not everyone's always on the same page. And so these cases can take a little bit of time. Like I told you, I have one right now that's 3 years old. I've had some files where we've had to try cases for the third time until we got the case resolved. So imagine that one went on 9 years. So
Wow.
hopefully that doesn't happen here and we can get the case resolved. But, cases do take a long time sometimes.
Yeah, no doubt. All right. Well, thanks for listening to Road to Recovery with Sagi Shaked. Jackknife crashes are violent and complex, as we've talked about, but with the right attorney, you can protect your rights and hold the responsible parties accountable. Visit shakedlaw.com to learn more or schedule a consultation. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave us a review. We appreciate it. Sagi, always great chatting with you. Thanks so much for your time.
Likewise. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.